Their last bit of advice was that we should be concerned about water and the incoming flood.
We had been warned about the approaching storm, but the high waters wouldn't come for another few days. Later in the week, heavy runoff would throw the expedition into a tailspin. In the meantime, we were transported to a place of complete calm, complete peace. We left our campsite west of Askia early in the day in anticipation of heavy rains and to escape the clouds of flies. Our first big driving day took us around the east side of Iceland. We grabbed another fantastic hot meal in Hup before setting up camp for the night. The next day, we set our sights on the glacial lagoons on the southern edge of Vatnajökull. Vatnajökull is the largest glacier in Europe. It covers over 3,000 square miles, covering 8% of Iceland. At its thickest, the ice is over half a mile deep. Here on the southern end, long fingers of the glacier push through canyons carved by the ice over millennia.
I was just looking at all this glacier that's showing through the clouds right now and thinking about how immense that is. It's like we've walked a good distance in and it still feels like no closer, no further away. And this is just like the tip of the glacier. So like yesterday, it's 2 days ago now, we were seeing the north side of this glacier. And it took us all that driving to get down to the other side of this. So it's just an immense, semi-liquid, always changing kind of thing. It's just interesting to think about.
Here, the glacier calves in massive chunks of ice into a lagoon, where tidal waters from the ocean will swirl the blue icebergs in the lagoon. Eventually, the pull of the receding tide will pull some of the floating ice through a narrow neck and out to sea. The icebergs have a hypnotic quality to them. At first glance, the lagoon appears rather static, but after a few moments you start to detect the motion and the drifting of these huge building-sized pieces of ice in the water. There's something powerful and scary about something that large moving and the amount of kinetic energy carried by the biggest icebergs. Stay long enough and there's a chance to see massive chunks of the ice calve off the glacier in the distance, or the shifting and tipping of an enormous iceberg up close. I was also transfixed by the life cycle of the water in the glacier. The water comprising the glacier may be centuries old, moving only inches per year until it finally breaks free as an iceberg. Then, it spends a few days, maybe a few weeks, drifting around the lagoon until it happens to be in the right position to be pulled out by the tide into the ocean. Then, it might drift out to sea, slowly vanishing into the ocean. Or, it could be taken by a wave and pushed onto the beach, where it can glisten and shine like an enormous diamond in its final days. I suppose that reflects on the transient nature of our lives as well. Day by day, we're all getting closer to disappearing into history, the same as any iceberg melting into the sea. Sometimes I wonder if Amanda is sharing the same deep introspection in the moment as I am.
What are you thinking about?
Macaroni and cheese.
What'd you find, Amanda?
A baby iceberg. It's right there.
Among the floating icebergs, there's also a variety of wildlife to enjoy, like the Arctic tern, Arctic skua, and we were lucky enough to watch some harbor seals playfully ducking around the icebergs. There are a number of opportunities to check out the glacier peeking through different canyons on the southern shore, each with its own character, but all of them awe-inspiring. In a state of calm and introspection, we pointed the Forerunner back toward the highlands. We hadn't even left pavement when we encountered our first obstacle.
They're gonna charge us, I think. spent this morning resetting the truck, getting reoriented, tossing our garbage, filling up water, and planning out what's going to be our last week here.
Once on dirt, we started climbing up through some beautiful terrain. And then the rain started. At the time, we didn't know how hard it was going to be to find blue skies the rest of the trip and what kinds of challenges the rain would present. But we were prepared for the weather, and we wouldn't let it hold us back. We were thankful for this resolve, as a small turnout off the road led us to the most unexpected, jaw-dropping view I've ever seen. I could not believe what I was seeing. I've never experienced a canyon that was so tight, so sheer, with precarious buttresses and overhangs, all draped in verdant moss and vegetation. The thrill of discovery resonated in my body. I felt alive. We kept pushing farther into the highlands and made camp in an alcove protected by lava rock, and Amanda set to preparing dinner.
It's been a while since we've done Amanda's cooking segment. What's for dinner tonight?
We are having marinara pasta with some bread and butter.
That evening, some unexpected guests joined us for our evening meal. After we finished our dinner and our guests had left, the rain picked up again and we headed to bed for the night. In the morning, we set to exploring the area around camp. The first order of business was to survey the area from high ground.
So we're on Laki, which is a cone along this fault. There's craters going as far as the eye can see this way, and craters as far as the eye can see going that way. And in 1783, the Earth just opened up, and this was the second biggest eruption in recorded history. So it's incredible to see this huge chasm in the Earth, and think about that force that was being let out at that time. It really must have been unimaginable event then. It's really cool to see the green moss. We've got a little bit of rain, but I've been told that that's what keeps the moss green. So
The landscape around Laki was an amazing display of contrast between jagged rocks that formed when the Earth was torn apart by explosive lava blasts, contrasted with a snow-like blanket of soft green moss and delicate mountain flowers. We descended Laki to continue exploring the area. Amanda did some recon around the next corner and deserves an award for understatement of the year.
It's pretty cool. There's like a little crater lake back there. Should we go check it out?
yeah, what's back there?
A crater lake. Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
It's pretty cool looking.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh my word. What a sight. I've never seen such an amazing mashup of colors. Between the lime and mint greens in the moss, the deep aquamarine shades in the water, and the burnt red lava rock in the distance. The sinuous curve of the crater lip contrasted with the jagged lava rock. Just wow. This was a very special place.
All this like craggy lava rock with the moss on it feels like a kind of like an otherworld fantasy world. And I guess there was a scene, like the opening scene in Rogue One was filmed in kind of a lava field like this, so kind of getting Star Wars fantasy world vibes out here.
We continued scouting this enchanted area the rest of the morning. After a quick roadside lunch at a lava tube, we wrapped up our time near Laki and set our sights for another legendary area of the Icelandic Highlands. We had a lot of ground to cover, and the going was slow on the slick, muddy highland tracks. The rain showed no signs of letting up, so we stopped and set up camp while we were still fresh.
We're heading for Landmannalaugar. Stopped at an earlier campsite just to get off the road because we knew that tonight was going to be a really slow-moving night with all the rain, so everything just takes longer. We got the awning set up and just cooking dinner. What's for dinner tonight?
Ravioli with some butter sauce and salt and bread and butter.
Bon appetit. What's tonight's activity?
Go drink some tea and eat some biscuits and try to keep warm in this time before it's time to go to bed.
Sounds like a plan. You doing a cookie dance?
Well, it's pretty good. My tea is really warm. So, makes me all cozy inside.
Let's see. It's been raining for like 24 hours. It was kind of coming down pretty good last night. We set up the awning and the tent and made dinner under the awning. Finally set up the tent a little bit later. I think we crawled into the tent at like 7 p.m. Tried to draw out like our tea time and biscuits as much as we could, but there's just not a whole lot you can do when it's raining like this. So let's see, got up this morning and it wasn't like raining really hard, but all night it was just this kind of little spitty rain that was it's almost worse than the heavy rain because it just blows under the awning, so everything under the awning was wet. Well, I had the table out. I put away the chairs last night, so wasn't a huge deal, but just moving kind of slow today, trying to keep dry, stay under the awning as much as possible, and I think that's about it. We're heading to Landmannalaugar today, so maybe hit up the hot springs and at least something that we can enjoy in the rain.
The rain and fog in the highlands was thick that morning, and we may never know what epic views pass us by in the early hours of the day. Eventually, the fog started to lift, and the highlands once again began to wow us with their rugged, enchanting beauty. As soon as we started nearing Landmannalaugar, the rainbow hues for which the place is known began appearing in the landscape. Landmannalaugar roughly translates as the People's Pool, referring to the geothermal pool where Icelanders have been bathing for centuries. This location has a large hiker's hut and serves as the starting point for the popular Laugavegur multi-stage trek. We tried the hot springs and wound up spending the night in our tent near the lodge, but were frankly overwhelmed by the number of people at Landmannalaugar. So we set out early the next morning, seeking the solitude of the highlands with no set path. This area of Iceland has a broad network of roads and trails, and today we are going to navigate them like a choose-your-own-adventure book. We were given a hint by a local guide on a viewpoint that was not to be missed, so we made our way down some trails to see if we could find it. Along the way, Amanda provided a weather report.
It's windy. It's real windy.
Every part of Iceland has a unique beauty to it, but the drama of the southern region was proving to be unmatched. This place could be a computer rendering or something out of Peter Jackson's art department. You can get somewhat saturated after being in a place for a while, immune to the incredible views after some exposure, but Iceland continued to drop our jaws.
They're beautiful. There's so many of them. And they all just cascade down into the little valley. And the water is so, like, green, blue.
We followed the river downstream to a lower cascade. Here, Amanda provided an updated weather report.
Wind is crazy.
From there, we started charting a course to higher ground to see if we could find an area to camp for the night. The road started to become less traveled and less maintained the higher we got. Eventually, we hit our dead end, with the camp we were aiming for just beyond the saddle of a glacier.
The sign on the way here said only XL 4x4s. And we were doing pretty good. There were a few washouts that I had to get out of the truck and take a look. But we've hit a glacier and we're just not going to make it. And it doesn't look like a place that we would want to spend the night.
Oh, it's real cold.
So we're gonna turn around now and see what else we find.
We put another couple hours of travel behind us trying to locate another highland camping opportunity, but it turned into another dead end.
I tried heading to a second hut and pulled up. There was a car there, and I was just gonna go knock on the door and see if like whoever's staying at the hut would find us just camping in the parking area outside. And when I looked through the windows, it looked like it had been completely ransacked. There was like milk on the counter, there was a half-drunk bottle of Jack Daniels on the counter, there was just like plates and everything strewn about. Not the most welcoming scene, so I didn't even end up knocking on the door. So we're cutting our losses and heading back to the one now. I think we still have a couple hours of on-trail action to get us there, but I think we gave it a good try, trying to find some huts to stay at tonight. But
We made very valiant effort.
We made our way down from the highlands and checked into an established campground just off the ring road. We had hoped for milder conditions at lower elevation, but the wind-driven rain was in full force here as well.
there's super whipping wind out there tonight, so we are eating pasta in the Forerunner. But we're warm and dry and fall asleep eventually, I guess.
And we cooked this in Hot Logic
And
on our drive down here.
Yeah, so staying dry and staying out of the elements.
Yep.
Being smart.
After 4 days dominated by rain, we were desperate for some sunshine to boost morale and to dry out our equipment before it was all stowed away for the container trip back to the US. While sheltering in the Forerunner that evening, we came across a phrase in our guidebook that was a beacon of hope. The glaciers protect this quiet spot from some of the region's harsher weather. It is often warmer or drier in Thorsmark than nearby. The next day we decided to see if such an oasis was real or merely a mirage. There seemed to be hope on the horizon, with sunshine emanating from the valley ahead. Only a few minutes into the road leading to Thorsmark, the cloud cover was broken, with patches of blue breaking through on occasion. In the distance, we could see the highlands enveloped by thick clouds and walls of rain. It looked like Mordor in the distance, and we were just beyond the grasp of its darkness. The trail led past mammoth glaciers in a valley strewn with countless waterfalls. The streams fed by the waterfalls coalesced on the way to the valley floor and led to a number of water crossings on the way to Thorsmark, each crossing deeper and faster than the last. Eventually, we reached a crossing that could only be described as a river. This was the end of the road. We stood and stared, knowing that a warm, dry camp was just out of reach across the river. After 15 minutes of pacing up and down the bank, a heavily modified Arctic truck on enormous tires came down the track and stopped at the water's edge. The driver said this was the highest she had seen the crossing, swollen from the days of heavy rains. In the meantime, an Icelandic guide had arrived with passengers in tow. The guide said they had done the crossing before, and without stopping to evaluate the conditions, they pulled into the raging river.